2014 meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board to order. The meeting's been officially warned.
Yes.
We're here this morning to talk about budget-related items. We'll start with an opportunity for public participation. If anybody wants to participate from the public about an item that's not on the agenda. I want to thank everybody for being here first thing in the morning to talk about these budget-related issues. I prepared an overview agenda, and it's over there on the right. And I would ask, as the first item, for everybody to just go through that proposed agenda for today's meeting and identify whether there are any other issues you think should be on the table for discussion today, or if you think that any of those items might usefully be discussed in a different order or configuration. Mike?
Part 2 is missing from the list of capital items.
What's missing? Wait, you mean the vehicle for the assistant chief? Yeah, I don't think that was for consideration for being added or cut. I mean, it's already in the budget. Any other items to be included or that you think might be discussed in a different order? All right, well, what I've tried to do in this overview agenda is to marshal all of the issues that we've discussed that remain open for decision before the 2016 budget is finalized. And all the topics that need to be further discussed. If anything else comes up over the course of this discussion or this morning, please just speak up and we'll add it to the list if necessary, or move it around if necessary. Patrick?
David, there is one additional expense I was hoping to bring up at some point in time this morning. It relates to public collection of recycling on Main Street. And it would be in addition to the capital of about $30,000. It comes as a consequence of Act 148, and essentially what it says is that everywhere we provide a public trash can, such as on Main Street, we need to also provide a public recycling vessel as well. So we can talk about that in more detail later, I'm sure.
All right. Anybody else have any items that have not previously been reported to the group for inclusion in the budget? All right, so the first topic I thought we could address, and we also have it at the end for summary purposes, is an overview or any general comments. So when we were at the last select board meeting, decision was made, among other things, to add money for the police fire project back into the budget, which raised a series of concerns. They've been the subject of a lot of speculation without a lot of background information, and I want to make sure that everybody's got an opportunity to speak to any overview if that's what they want to do. Is there anybody on the board at this point who wants to provide any overview or general comments about what we're going to do this morning, or with respect to the budget?
Mr. Chair, are we on anything specific, or are we just on the whole, anything up on the board?
This is overview and general comments, so you have to say whatever you like, John.
No, but at some point, I would like the chief to talk about, Gunny to talk about the police side of the police fire project. To just give a quick overview of what his thoughts are on it, and if you feel like it, you know, I just want to get as much information out there as possible on that side of it, if we could. So I don't know if this is the time to do that or wait until we get to that spot, or
I think if you want to have I'm not sure it's the right time to have a far-reaching discussion of police fire, but
I don't
I
know.
think we'll try to do that under the police fire funding.
It's fine.
I think that's a good idea.
I hadn't planned to, but I guess what I'll do is share kind of what I'm thinking that we're here for, just kind of a broad view. And basically, first it's to look at the police fire. We voted in our last meeting to go forward as quickly as we could. So I think our first job is to figure out how can we do that? What do we have to do before town meeting? What can we do before town meeting? What realistically do we have enough information to put together? And the other is to decide, I think maybe not finally, but close to finally, on whether there are things we want to put back in that we don't want to see reduced. And I see lost is up there to get lost again, so
Yep.
that'll take the time.
Anybody else want to start off?
I'm ready to do it when we do the...
Yeah. Anybody who's in attendance, anyone of the department heads or anybody from the press have any questions, general comments, anything about overview? All right, so the next item I think that would be useful to go over before getting to the police fire issue specifically is this summary of proposed changes and I guess also the other data that was handed out. I think that a number of board members were sort of confused at data that was presented to us. Patrick, if you could please start by explaining what are the changes that you've listed here under changes, and explain why they've been written into the budget since the last time we saw it.
Sure. There appears to have been a bit of miscoordination with the Human Services Committee to the tune of about $10,000. Last time, I believe the board spoke with them. We provided them with some general direction to the tune of, I think it was $120,000. However, the previous year had been $110,000. Do I have my numbers right, John?
Yep.
Okay. So, in order to reconcile with the recommendation coming from the Human Services Funding Committee, $10,000 has been added. There are a couple of changes in terms of bond interest. No, actually, bond interest is strictly the first year of interest-only payments for additional police fire bonding, assuming a $7.9 million additional drawdown. So the first year's payment would be interest only, and that would sum up the $235,675. Notes, principal, and interest have been adjusted in part because Chief Bacassi was rather aggressive and successful at securing a better deal for the air packs than we had previously thought reasonable. And so that adjusts downward just a little bit in terms of principal and interest. And then the Vibers, our police department works in coordination with the state, and so each year they're essentially informed what we need to be budgeting for certain internal communications between police departments, and Chief Fitzgerald was notified that we'd need an extra $4,400. Am I right, Chief? Okay.
Can you then
So those
please
are the changes.
All right. Can you then please explain what you mean by this full year and half year calculation?
I believe that John O'Connor put this together, and he may best be able to explain it, but I believe what he was trying to show here is if we were to adopt a local option sales tax, it's a process. It may not be good to go on, it wouldn't likely be good to go on July 1. So if you wanted to look at its impact and how it affected the year, assuming it might take 6 months to put in place, that's what the half year would be. If we could get it closer to the full year, this would be the impact. So I think the attempt here was to really show the possible benefit to the budget of having this new source of revenue, and in two different ways, showing, assuming differing periods of time for which it could be initiated. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I don't recall there being any request from the board for analysis of the local option sales tax as part of this overview that's been soundly defeated before at town meeting. There's been a request to consider putting it on the next agenda. So I see all this data about the local option sales tax. It's really not clear to me particularly why, because it's not an available revenue source at this time, but we'll talk about it towards the end of the meeting, I think. Can you then explain on the police fire sheet? There's $1 million and the 790 figure. Is the $1 million just for us to understand $1 million increments?
Yes, sir. Precisely. Precisely.
Anybody on the board or any department heads have anything else that they want to see clarified or explained from the materials that were distributed to us?
No, did you guys get the text I sent you about?
The email?
The email?
Yeah, but I didn't get to look at it.
I didn't
got it on
look
my
at it
phone.
either. I
Okay.
sent it last night.
Did you bring copies, John?
Huh?
Did you bring copies?
No, I didn't, but, oh, no, I can make copies. But it just, for
If
me,
it's going to help the conversation, because, I mean, I welcome the 1% data, whether it's accurate or what the option, I'm always happy to have more information. And if there's something that's going to help inform the
no,
conversation.
for me, it was just, I had to dumb it down, just for me, so it,
And what makes you think we know?
well, after what Kate and I were talking, so we were, and
You really
David,
need it.
I was confused on it, so it was just, it helped me out.
So it needs to be even dumber?
Well, so,
John, are you able to make copies? Or
yeah.
That would
yep,
be great.
Yeah,
I'd
I
like to
could.
Take a look.
Yep, absolutely.
Can I ask a little question?
Go for it.
This is a very
John?
small one in the scheme of
No,
things.
me neither.
Oh, what's the deal with the museum? Because we still have that $7,000 in. And weren't you going to have a conversation with them about whether they need,
Yes, I was. Yes, I did. And good catch.
do they need the 7,000?
Well, I think if you ask the museum, they will say yes. But the conversation I had with their director some months ago was that given the budget constraints we were under, it was unlikely that that would be able to continue into the future. And if they had any specific budget requests, that they should make those rather than sort of rely upon a sort of estimated figure year in, year out. I don't believe we've received anything specific from them, so
So that's a figure in
I think that's a
flux.
figure we can potentially adjust. Yeah.
All right, so let's be clear about that, please. There's a $7,000 allocation to the museum on page 8 of 18 under Human Services. And there is some question whether some or all of that should be taken out of the budget.
And I have one other little thing.
All right.
The attorney's fees have remained the same on page 5, so I don't know. That's a little adjustment.
Right.
Where are we at?
Or choose?
Right. At this point, the attorney's fees line would be increasing 1% over last year.
Yeah. That's page 5.
Well, it's at 105
It's going up 2.5.
to 103. So we should just please make sure in the next draft of the budget
Yeah.
that the attorney's fees represents 1%, a 1% increase.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
We'll talk about the museum funding later, Kate.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah, today,
make sure
later
we all
today, but
knew
right.
about it.
Any other questions about the materials that have been presented to us late last week? All right, so the next item is, or anybody else have any other inquiries or comments, anything from the materials that were distributed last week? Patrick?
Yes. David, I'm not entirely sure where in the scheme of things I should bring this up. But I do have a bit of a concern. We've added back into the budget additional borrowing for the police and fire project. And it concerns me a bit for the future of the fiscal 16 budget to include monies to repay a bond, which we, at this point in time, have yet to receive authorization for. I think that could be potentially a source of confusion or frustration by the representatives at town meeting. I know there's quite a bit of work to do to move forward with the police and fire project. You know, we need to enter discussions with property owners, develop conceptual plans, do some public education, and then set a meeting for a new bond vote. And I guess I just would raise the issue as to whether or not it's problematic then to include funds in the budget for a bond that we have yet to receive authorization. I know that touches on a number of topics on the list. So we can probably bring it up and discuss it as we move through.
Thank you. Other comments or inquiries about what was in the summary of budget changes? So that next item we would talk about is the police fire funding. So I guess we could please start, Patrick and John, by just explaining what it is that you presented in the materials in terms of cost data.
Sure. I think if you look at the bond amortization schedule on the right-hand side, it shows additional borrowing for $7.9 million, which at the moment is the estimated additional need to fully complete the police and fire project according to the basic framework we've come to know as Plan F, which involves resituating the police department to a new location and keeping the two fire stations essentially according to the original plan. As you'll know, with bonds, in the first year, you pay interest only, and then in subsequent years, you pay a combination of interest and principal. Typically, the largest payment is in the second and early years, and they sort of gradually are reduced in future years. So effectively, what this shows, and it's buried into the budget as well under bond interest, is the inclusion of what we anticipate at the moment to be the maximum amount of borrowing necessary to complete the project as it is presently conceived as Plan F.
Plan F, I dug that back out, included the three options. You just chose the lowest cost one?
It's
Because Plan F includes 12,975 cost, a 14,531 cost, and a 13,153 cost. So you just took the 12,9?
yes.
Thanks. I guess that what we need to know is what members of the board want to do in terms of putting money for the police fire into the budget this year. And so I guess we need to hear from people who want to amend the budget to include that money, as to how much money you want to include, and any other comments related to the budgetary impact of the police fire project.
So,
Kate, if you want
I
to
was
go first and just
gonna-
ask a question.
I was just going to ask a question.
To help,
Didn't we-
direct the discussion.
At the last meeting, we voted to revise and put this in.
Mhm.
Does that mean was that not a final putting it in, or was that
I don't think we said what the number would be.
okay.
So a number was put in as a marker for now, but I think a decision has to be made about how much money to
Right.
go into the budget. You ready to go?
Yeah, and I want to make clear that the other day at our meeting, I was just as shocked as everybody that I had two other board members that agreed with me on at least keeping the police fire project on the board and moving forward. I have since talked with Gunny, Chief Fitzgerald, and I would like to have him just speak shortly on, we just had a discussion out back, and he came up with a pretty good idea that I think will help the project move forward without damaging it too much at representative town meeting, which I think that's where everybody's coming from, that it could get derailed or whatever. But so Chief, if you could just give a quick overview of what we talked about and what your perception of one of the areas that we're looking at, if it's feasible, and why we think it's a good way to go. But you also mentioned something about not taking out the full bond, but let's at least get something to keep it moving. So
It's no secret that I want to keep this project together and moving forward.
Yeah.
And ideally, we need to keep it together. We can't divide this project up. It needs to stay whole. And what John and I were discussing back there is, I don't believe it has to be an all or nothing deal with the police department, that if instead of getting the whole money and the breaking ground and doing the whole project, that if we just bond the amount to buy the property and stay on that, and then when the fire is completed and that a year or 2 or 3 down the road, then we can start in with the police department and have that phased in. And I know there's a lot of concern about the location of the police department. We're rather unique with compared to other emergency services as to we are assigned sectors. That's where our officers patrol. They don't respond to calls from the police department. So having a police department on Putney Road or here at 230 Main Street realistically has no effect whatsoever on our response time, because they're responding from their sectors, whether that be north, south, or west in the town. So basically they come back to the PD to do the paperwork and hold roll call and trainings and things of that nature. But mainly they're out and about. There is a property that is located on Putney Road that really suits our needs. I think it's minimum amount of renovations. Now, mind you, I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm not a project manager. I'm not into construction. But from what I saw, I went in there and had conversations with Steve Horton. It really would fit our needs quite nicely as it is right now. So what I was talking about was to get the bond to purchase that property, and then as situation merits, we go forward with the police department.
So that, in light, has changed a little bit of my perception on how we can move forward and not take such a big bite out of the 7.9 million. and phase it in, and still keep the project moving forward. And that's my goal, is to not let this stall. So, you know, so I'm not sure where the figures are at this point. What did we need to complete fire?
Another 3.7.
Figures from the last meeting are here if you want to look at them.
So we had,
That's with that property.
right. Police agent fire. So central fire is 5.5, and station 2 is 1.2. So, being that we've already spent the 1 million and we've already procured some of the property for central, and so that's already in that 1 million that we've spent, you know, so what are we looking at, about 3?
Well, the cost for the Putney Road, if the police would be moved up to Putney Road, is there separately.
Right. So it definitely knocks it down from 7.9 down to something that I think is a little bit more feasible, and to at least keep the project moving, to get Central and Station 2 going, because we've already spent that $1 million, and we have the $4 million just sitting there that can't go to anything else. So it makes no sense to let it sit there. So I would amend my last motion to try to eliminate some of that cost, to at least get either the right to move ahead on some of the properties on Putney Road, and to at least keep it going. So that's where my thought is on that. Because I know that there's 2 members on the board that are really concerned about that. But so I want to make this as to make it move forward as easily as it can. And I know these are tough decisions, but so that's what I'd like to see. And, you know, Chief, that really helped me out this morning a lot, because I did think it was all or nothing, you know, but if we can move along with that, and that's a good concession on your guys' parts. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm happy to. This
Go
is
ahead.
my.
Go ahead. I mean, we yelled at each other last
Right,
night.
we did yell at each other. I mean, I actually appreciate what was just said. My problem is, and this is sort of one of my problems from the very beginning when we had this discussion last meeting, is that I sort of feel like we're being arbitrary in what we're doing, and we don't have a full-fledged plan.
Right.
And it makes me really nervous, you know, because we had some people in April, when the budget was voted down, who were really, really concerned, you know, about their ability to pay the property taxes that we have. That's what drove me last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, to vote to not put the $7.9 million bond in. That was one of the reasons. The second reason was I felt like we were being extremely arbitrary at that particular moment because we have no plan. And this right now, what Chief Fitzgerald just said, was the first time we've heard even anything. And that was, you know, what you said was it was appreciated, but it was very not, you know, I still don't know what the plan would be. I'm still really concerned about that. We don't have a number based on what you just said, which concerns me because we don't have a number, so we really don't know where that fits in the budget. But I'm at this point where I worry that we're not doing any long-range planning, which may get us into trouble as we move forward. So until we know what the number is, and if we're just going to buy a property, I don't know if that means the police will move immediately up there and not have any of these things that you need. You know, I'm just still wary about this whole thing.
Well, again, I thought the chief was pretty clear about the fact that all we're looking for at this point is the money to keep it moving forward without getting into a lot of design, without getting into it, just so that we have the ability to procure a piece of property, and then, like the chief said, 2 years down the road, we get Central and Station 2 done with the money that we have, but we're not letting fire just totally disappear. They wouldn't move out of here right away. It just means that we have the money set aside to at least keep moving fire forward, minimally, without a huge impact on the budget at this point. And I disagree with you on the fact that we don't have a lot of information. I think there is plenty of information out there. That committee has worked very hard and diligent on everything that we've asked them to do. And to just say that we don't have that information, I think we do. But that's where we disagree, Ms. O'Connor.
This end of the table yet?
Yeah.
Donna?
I think it has been somewhat dizzying, honestly, since the end of our last select board meeting, really wrapping my mind around the extent of the work that needs to happen between now and town meeting, and also coming up with a budget that the town can live with and that the townspeople are behind. And so I understand your concern, Kate, and also your position. I think for me, understanding that this project has needed to happen for about 30 years, and really sitting with, if we don't dig in and at least do our very best to try to keep it moving forward in some financially responsible way, that the next select board and the next select board and all the future select boards are going to be exactly where we are, looking at the mountain of work that has to be done to make it concrete, and continuing on with the police fire committee bringing proposal after proposal after proposal in an attempt to get the project moved forward. I don't understand exactly why the project has to be done in its entirety at one time, but I do feel like teasing it apart also makes it more expensive down the road, because the longer we postpone it, the more everything is going to cost. I think part of the problem here is that we're looking at a system of government where this select board may change. In a few months' time, there may be different people sitting at the table. And I feel like it's worth our very best effort to see if we can get the amount of money that we're going to borrow to a place where, first of all, the 5 of us feel comfortable and in agreement on. And I don't think we're there yet. So it feels to me like we really need a lot of conversation this morning about that place, because as a select board, it's the first time that we have found ourselves in very different positions around a significant issue. So that's a growing edge for us, and a generative one. And there are also other major needs that each department head has brought before the select board, many of which cannot be postponed. And I reviewed all of those yesterday in preparation for the meeting. It doesn't seem to me like we can go without a dump truck or a grader. Can we go with a leaky pool? I don't know, but we have to look at the entire picture in a cohesive way, and then look at our budget. So I do feel strongly about needing to move forward. If we can get the number down, that would, I think, be really wise. I don't want to do the work on the budget, none of us do, only to have it be rejected by the town. And that is a real possibility. So how do we move forward in a very fiscally responsible manner and in a realistic manner?
Do you want to speak?
Yeah. I think a lot of my things I want to say are in response to things that I heard, and that happens all the time as I change my mind as things develop. Join John in thanking the chief for coming up with this, with an option for us that eases it somewhat. I think it's important to remember that the committee has consistently recommended keeping it whole, keeping it all in one package, and there are a couple of reasons for that. the primary one that I heard over and over again is that construction costs always go up. So if you wait a couple of years, the project is going to cost more money. There's also a lingering concern, which can become a realistic concern at any time, but it's a lingering concern that interest rates will suddenly go up, although there's nothing evident right now to indicate that that's likely, and that was a great concern when we put the first bond in, and it hasn't turned out to be a problem. But those are the reasons that I heard for keeping it together. I think there's also the question of inertia, that once the fire is done, everybody's going to say, isn't it beautiful? And then, geez, we can't afford a police station now, too. We just finished the sewer and the fire. So I think there's a concern about that as well. But again, as you said, we have to consider what's really possible, what's doable. I think it's also important to remember that these upgrades to the police and the fire facilities are a long-range plan. They're designed to resolve the current issues, any that we anticipate, and pretty much giving us 50 years of good service with an occasional patch and some ongoing maintenance. So it really is a long-range plan, and it stabilizes that part of our infrastructure. It stabilizes pretty much that part of our budget as well. We don't have things falling in or having to be dealt with immediately, or health concerns that, if nothing else, run up our insurance costs. So it really is a stabilization program, and I think for that reason it's a very responsible thing to do. The absence of, I think is what you were talking about, Kate, is the absence of the plan for, and real specifics about the police department part of it. Because the fire station, we've got 60% or more of the design and the plans in place. That's very clear, very stable, and we're really certain about what we're asking to pay for there. What we don't know and can't know for a while is what it's going to cost for the police station. But again, I think it's important to look that both fire stations the designs and the plans and everything are really rock solid. There's nothing that we can't explain, describe, show pictures of, do slideshows and PowerPoints about it. People want information about it. We have that information. We don't have it for the police station. So again, I can see why we would want to hold that off until we do have that, so that we can be clear about what it's going to cost. I don't think we're ever going to, as hard as I know we're going to work at it in the coming months, I don't think we're ever going to be able to really anticipate what is going to happen with revenue and what's going to happen with services and what other costs are going to go up over the next 5 or 10 years. But I think we're going to put a lot of effort into trying to figure that out and do exactly what you're talking about. I think doing those two projects that we know about is responsible. I don't think there's anything arbitrary. The police, I can see that, and I'm sure we would hear it from a number of people that, you want us to give you money to spend on, but we don't know what it is. You get the pig in the poke, or whatever the metaphor is. But maintaining infrastructure and maintaining the quality of those services is definitely a responsibility. And so I think I'd like to see us try to come up to figure out what it will cost, because these numbers, it doesn't just say, it's 7.2 for the fire station, or is it 4.2? Really, what do we need in this budget to complete the 2 fire projects and buy the? It sounds like the committee has kind of come down on one property, because they were talking about 2 the last time they came. This sort of settled on 1.
There's one that's certainly in the lead.
And they're both those properties are the same. So basically, put another $1 million in to secure the property and take it off the tax rolls. So I think I said enough.
Can I just clarify something?
Okay.
What I meant by no long-range plan and arbitrary wasn't just about the police fire project. It's about everything that we're doing as a whole. I mean, we have all kinds of capital needs that add up to the millions of dollars. And, right now we pared it down to $825,000. But to me, we just sort of pick and choose things, and sometimes I don't understand why we're picking and choose one grader over another. And does it because we can just pay for that now or whatever? So that's what I mean by having no long-range plan and being arbitrary. And, you know, yesterday at 12:12, one of our major employers in the area stopped working, you know, shut down. And that's a huge thing that we don't know how it's going to impact the economy of this town, but it has the potential. If you look at all the, you know, people that do it, have a mathematical approach to figuring it out, I think that those are the kind of things that when we go forward on our budget planning, we can't do things in a vacuum anymore. And those are the kind of things that concern me, long range and arbitrary.
I explained at the last meeting why I thought it was premature to be voting to put the project back with a definite face on it back into the budget. I'm not going to go back over that, except to say that, as I indicated, I think that it's way important for us to do a long-range plan looking at operating expenses and a comprehensive review of our town operations to make sure that operating expenses are properly addressing our needs, looking at long-term capital equipment expenses and capital infrastructure expenses and looking at them together over a 5-year or 10-year period. I think that whatever we decide with respect to the money that's going to be included in the budget, that long-term planning is going to happen. And exactly what the police fire project is going to look like has yet really to be fully developed. So I expect that will happen because we have a new town manager coming in who's going to be working with us to do that. I would address next the steps that would need to be taken in order really to get the project moving. And what I think, I'll then transition to what I think we should do with the budget, or at least what are some alternatives for the budget for this year, and my personal view about that. I think that a move of the police station up to Putney Road involves a very significant change in the way the town has done business. That is a significant public policy decision that has to be made. It's been vetted solely in the Police Fire Committee. It's never been talked about fully at the Select Board level. It's never been talked about fully by people in the town as a whole. We've had a significant premium and focus that we've placed for a generation or more on having us being a livable, walkable downtown with services that are available downtown. When we committed to rebuilding the Brooks House, we committed to the vitality of the downtown, and when the governor was here to reopen it, we talked about building it and rebuilding it downtown rather than building it up on the strip and in the cornfields. And I think that the public needs to be involved to the fullest extent possible about the possibility of moving the police station up to Putney Road rather than it being downtown. The fact that the committee was in favor of that and that the chief is in favor of that, that's interesting. But it's only the very, very first part of the process for making that sort of a public infrastructure and policy decision. And none of that work has yet been done. So I think there are operational impacts as well to moving the station up to Putney Road that haven't been addressed. We're talking about opening up a satellite downtown. I don't know what that's going to cost. I think that the final costs for construction and land acquisition are not really clear. But there's a general plan that the board has committed to, I guess, to taking the facility or the department out of town hall. Separate on the agenda is the cost of town hall renovations, whether we're going to include that in the budget, since we'd be taking 30% of the operations of the building out of the building if we're moving up to Putney Road. So I have way significant concerns about moving forward with this in this form at this time. If the board wants to make a commitment financially to moving forward with the project in concept, in this concept or some similar concept, the tangible step is to put the money in the budget. And so we've got planning here or projections for what the costs would be at $7.9 million additional borrowing, which involves $235 in interest for fiscal year 16. So if you want to include $235,000 in interest on a potential $7,900,000 additional bond borrowing, we can include that in this year's budget. We keep getting different sorts of proposals, so then there comes a proposal to just put the money in to buy the land and to go forward with the police part of the project. That might involve borrowing less money, and that's, I guess, an alternative, but it merely points out for me the premature nature of this discussion, because we don't have something way specific yet that's got public buy-in, which is a key part of what we need to do. If you want to put the $235,000 in the budget or some lesser amount, I guess that's a step that can be taken. I've heard that there are those who have been saying, well, we want to get to a 5-0 select board vote for the budget and for this project. It's not going to happen. I've explained the reasons I'm not in favor of this at this point, and I'm generally going to continue to vote against doing it in what I consider to be a precipitous way. Now, if we include the $235,000 in the budget for the bonding, the question then becomes, where's the money coming from, and are we going to make any cuts to step back from the impact on the taxpayer as a whole, because let's not forget, the next item on the agenda is pay-as-you-throw impacts. And we came in before adding this money, or before considering adding this money in, we're coming in with a flat budget. A flat budget, essentially. Maybe a little bit of a cut, wasn't it, Patrick? Like a quarter of a penny. We were going to have a cut, but individual households are going to be bearing the expense of buying garbage bags, which is essentially a tax increase of probably a couple of percent is what we contemplated and what we understood. So if you want to include $235,000 in the budget to show a commitment to this project and continue to do the work going forward, that's probably the way it'll have to happen anyway. But then I may wind up voting against the budget if it's a $235,000 increase, which is a 3% increase on top of the pay-as-you-throw. And I don't know how else to reconcile that policy decision we're making financially to support the project. That's where I'm at. But that gets down to dollars. You know, you want to include 235 in interest? You know, do you want to include less? Do you want to take it from the surplus? Is that a good idea now? That's really the question now.
So, there are a lot of things that are on our plate right now. Just to sum up where I am, and don't take this wrong, I really don't care if we go into representative town meeting split. I have no problem with that. You know, if it's a 3-2 vote or whatever it's got to be, everybody can argue their point. And again, I don't see where we have to be unanimous on how we go to meetings. So that certainly doesn't bother me. I haven't done all the math yet, but I still want to put into our budget getting getting fire station going completely on Central and West Brat, and then procuring enough money to at least keep fire moving forward.
Police.
Huh?
You mean police?
Police moving forward. What did I say? Fire? Okay. So, and again, we've got a few weeks to figure out what that figure is going to be. There are so many other things that are coming to light in the last couple months that have been thrown at us. You know, Act 148, all this other stuff with pay-as-you-throw, with town hall renovations. I talked with Patrick yesterday, thinking, can we? Because my long-range plan is to get out of this building completely. You know, I don't think I've ever been shy about saying that. This building is a giant hole in the water that we keep throwing money into, and I'm sick of throwing money into it. So I asked Patrick, can we, if we have a way of once police is out of here, taking the rest of the offices and renting a spot, or buying it, or getting out of this building because it's costing way too much money to keep this building going. So I don't want to put the $400,000 into this building, and I would love to see if we can talk to the state of Vermont and say, can we hold off on that? So there's all these things that are happening quickly. But police fire has been on our plate for a long time. I think we have to take care of one thing first. And like David Scholes says, it is a long-range plan. That has been thought out, that's been vetted, it's been, you can't talk about this thing anymore. So, you think, I know, yes, you can. But that's okay, because if you're not feeling, I feel good about it. And I'll be the first one to say that I don't want taxes to go up, because I've said that right from the get-go. But at some point, you have to make a decision, and if it's so again, and we've been thinking about a lot of things. Do we put the money into the pool? Do we close it for 6 weeks? Do we close it for 1 year? And maybe Carol, you can do some begging and put it, and going out and trying to get Chris Chapman's philanthropy thing going. So there's a lot of things. We're always going to have things on it. We're always going to need a grader. We're always going to need a dump truck. But we still have to be fiscally responsible about how we move forward and how we take care of the buildings that we have and the safety of our employees. So, to me, it's been talked about too much, and I think we need to move forward. I don't have the figures of what I would ask for yet, but it certainly does include finishing Central, finishing Station 2, and then procuring enough money to move forward on the police station.
All right, what I'm going to ask now, just in the interest of making sure that all the business gets done, there's been a lot of general discussion. Everybody's said their piece about where they stand with respect to decision-making with respect to police fire. I really think that it's necessary to try to get down to some real decision-making about a number that can be included, and if you're not ready to deal with that number at this point, then we can at least vote on keeping in the $235,000 in interest payments for the $7.9 million. If you want to come up with a different number, it would probably be just shy of $10 million, 9.6, to build out police, to build out the 2 fire stations, and then to spend $880 or $1 million to buy a piece of land for police station. So that's like $9.6 million. And if you want to include less interest, $150,000 or $180,000 in the budget, that's a possibility. But we got to move on to the other inquiries. So if there's some specific proposal or motion about the amount of money to include in the budget for the police fire bonding, I think that's what's appropriate.
You came up with 4.6, I came up with 4.7, because I figured $1 million.
There we go.
$1 million for the property, and John's going to give us the real number. But I think if we're going to, the number we should put in should be the interest payment for what we're talking about borrowing. I don't know if we need to formally vote to accept the chief's recommendation and go with finishing the 2 fire stations and $1 million to buy that property. I know what you said, Dave, is true. We did all have our chance to say what we wanted to say. One thing I wanted to add just generally is that every decision that we make changes conditions and raises new questions. We are never going to be in a position where we know everything we need to know to make a decision and not have to alter it or have further public information. And I think John talked about getting out of this building, and that's something that, I think we all would, if there's a good way to do it, we would do it. I think, we can't know what's coming. I heard last week that Holstein has some office space that we might be able to move into. The substation could provide all the services that you get at the window here. The Triple T contract may change entirely what we're paying for trash, and whatever it is, it's going to be less per taxpayer than it is right now, whether you buy the bags whether we're buying bags or selling bags or not. So it's just, what happens, whatever we decide, it's going to be, it's going to adjust to what happens after that. If we decide to build a station out there, all the questions that we will never think of are going to come up. Things in that process are going to ramp new questions. So I think, again, let's put the 4.7 in, go with the chief's recommendation, and move on to the next items, to what else we want to have in the budget. Unless we need to vote formally to say the three of us want to do it that way, as opposed to what we have here right now, which is what we agreed to last time.
If you want to, right now, leave the $230,000 in interest in the budget, $235,000, it says 235, or if you want to put in less, that's fine. I think we just need to know how you all, I mean, I'm going to vote against it. So,
I know you are, and that's
So
fine.
I need to know what
Yep.
it is that you want to propose.
Oh, I would like to put it in for the 4.7, whatever the interest is on 4.7 for
The first year.
the first year. That's what I would like to add.
4.7 in additional borrowing. So, John, can you tell us that quickly?
No pressure.
You want guys?
Come on, we're waiting.
Fingers.
2/3 is 7.9.
You know, while John's figuring,
What I'll say, Dave, briefly, is that we've maintained the status quo pretty effectively over the course of the last year and a half. But we have not been engaged in long-term planning over the course of the last year and a half. It's why we waited a year and a half to make a decision about
making a hire of a town manager.
and there is work that can be done to do that planning, at least to get on the table everything that's known and that's foreseeable. And it's not been done at this point. And that's why I called for waiting, but we've decided not to wait. But there's a lot of things that can come up, and there's a lot of things that are known and that can be known. We've not marshaled them and planned for them, because that's not been happening over the last year and a half.
You have a general number, John?
About 150,000.
Right. So if you want to reduce it from 235 to 150, that's a fine way to proceed. If you want to leave the 235 in, that's fine as well. You all think about that. Mr. DeGray had his hand up. Do you still want to say something?
Well, I tried to stay out of your business, being an alum, but I have watched your deliberations on all the subjects above, and I watched your meeting 2 weeks ago. Actually, David, your speech was interesting in terms of long-range planning, and I have heard parts of it this morning. The sad part about this conversation that I'm hearing now is we're going to change the focus and go against the committee's recommendation. We're going to put money in to buy a parcel of property. And now we're going to own a parcel of property with the potential for that police station not to be up there for 5, 10, 15 years. John Allen was correct in what he said at the last meeting. There is no good time to do a capital project. There is never going to be a good time to do a capital project. There's never going to be this huge infusion of revenue into the tax base that's going to reduce the impact on taxpayers. And so as I listen to you today, I'm going, you're going to have to warn a town meeting member, and you guys are just spinning your tires, and at some point you make decisions, whatever they may be, and you go forward. Now, whether I agree with what your plan is here, you still have the idea of, I think I'm understanding that the rest of this money is to complete Station 1 and Station 2 and buy the parcel of property. And then, well, then we can say we have a parcel of property, and whenever we get to that project, It certainly is it 1 year, 2 year because of the impact. I agree wholeheartedly with David in terms, and Kate has chimed in, is that we don't do anything with the capital plan. We have it vetted out, but that's like saying to everybody, okay, put your needs down. Well, do we really need the grader? Do we need the dump trucks? Just because they're 10 years old doesn't mean that we need to replace them. And I don't think that analysis has ever really been done. We just have things there that, yeah, we should be doing, but do they need to be done? And before I sit down, and it hasn't been discussed yet, you have all this money in reserve, and I was on the board when we set this arbitrary figure of 10%. Well, to provide a level of service, and we say we want to maintain a level of service, so we're going to level fund our budget. But if the level of service means that we have to buy a certain piece of equipment to maintain that level of service, then that's what it costs. You can't just say we're going to zero fund the balance because you have to buy, there's big equipment purchases. So at the end of the day, you know, I don't want to have $1.5 million sitting in the bank and we're taking out bonds to buy equipment. Now, do I think that we should have some money in the bank? Yes, I do. And that might, for me, that might be a couple $100,000. We have the ability to go out and borrow money if we have an emergency. But for us to have this huge chunk of money sitting in the bank, and then we're going out and borrowing money for capital projects, has always not been something I supported. And I really don't support anybody on this board, town school board, high school board, when they take this revenue and just stick it into the revenue of the budget because it artificially reduces the tax rate. And you have found it this year when you took that $311,000 and stuck it in to reduce my taxes for this year. And so I get this artificial feeling that my taxes are lower, but if I don't have that same amount this year to put in, which you don't, then my taxes have to go up and make that up. And so if you're going to spend my money, which I do recommend you spend more of that surplus money than this arbitrary figure of 10%, then get something tangible that's going to save me money in interest payments and save me money for many years to come. Because if you are buying a truck with it, then we're at least going to get 10 years out of it. And thank you for your time here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. DeGray. What did you say the number was, 150?
It's closer to 140.
140,
Yeah,
okay.
right
So,
around.
at this point, the options on the table would seem three. Either we're going to leave the $235,000 in $235,675 in the budget, which represents commitment to borrowing or an intention to borrow to build out all three phases of the project in the lowest cost F alternative. The second is to put $140,000 in borrowing or $150,000 in borrowing into the budget, which represents building out Station 1 and 2 and acquiring the land to move the police station, or not including any interest. So if you want to leave the 235, I think it really requires a motion one way or another, because we're going to do this by motion now, so there's a record.
Yeah.
So can I just clear up one thing? It's not to purchase land. It's not to purchase a building. It's to have the ability to purchase a building. It's not saying that we're going to go out and buy this building right away. It's just saying that we have the money there in case it becomes available. I don't want to take something off the tax map until we have all of our figures and we have everything ready to go. So I just want to clarify that. Chief, that's the way I'm understanding it, is that we just want to have something in reserve in case something came up, that we had the right to go out and at least research it, knowing that we have some of that money set aside for that purpose.
Wait a second, I want to be clear, okay? That's not, I understand the inquiry to the chief, but it's not really a question for the chief at this point. I mean, the select board's got to make a decision. And either we're going to include the interest for the entire project, or we're going to include the interest for the 2 fire stations and earnest money, if you want to call it,
That's
$1 million
fine.
towards the police.
There you go.
Because that's what you're saying.
Exactly.
All right, but that's
I
still
just wanted to-
$150,000.
Right.
You want to make that into a motion?
Yes. However, yes.
All right,
I'm
so...
not a motion maker.
Okay, well, I move we include the first year bond interest payment on a $4.7 million either bond or note, depending on where we get the best rate, to complete the 2 fire station projects and to establish $1 million earnest money toward the completion of the police department.
Yep, very nice.
Between the two
Well
of you,
put.
you laid it right out there for me.
Is there any discussion, any further discussion at this point about this motion? Mr. DeGray?
I guess I'm confused. I heard the chief and John talking about this parcel of property. And so why do I want to incur interest if we're just going to kind of wait for it? You're going to take it off the tax rolls. If this is the parcel of property that people seem to agree on, or at least this has the priority of a lot of people that are in the inner circle here, then for us to add $1 million and to kind of have it sit there, I would hope that from my perspective, if you're going to borrow an extra $1 million, that this is for negotiations for a piece of property. Now, it may fall through the budget, it may fall through, negotiations don't always go the way that we hope to, but for us to just kind of put $1 million in and then maybe not do it, why should I be incurring interest for something that may or may not happen? So I would hope that this motion says to enter into negotiations for a parcel of property, because that's moving the project forward. Even though I think it's a lateral move, at least you have the parcel of property that might get finished in who knows how many years. But to just have it there in case, because you don't feel comfortable in taking something off the tax rolls, that's not what this is about. This is about the project. And you can't be worried about the consequences of taking that property off the tax rolls if the priority is the project. And to me, it sounds like the board, there's at least 3 of you that are concerned that you want the project to move forward, then move forward with the project, whatever the vote turns out. But that's what I would like to see in the motion, be more clear about the purchase of a parcel of property and not wait in case something becomes available.
In order to just make sure to provide some perspective, the motion that was made at the last meeting included working towards negotiating right of first refusal on one of the parcels. So the purpose of this meeting is to deal with the budget figures. So that's what we're voting on at this point. Patrick?
Yes, sir. I think, David, you're right in your recollection of the motion. The motion had sort of 3 components to it, one of which was we should move forward with the project. I'm paraphrasing here. One of which is we should enter negotiations with some of the property owners. And then the third component, which was we should add some money into the budget. I continue to believe there is going to be the need for new bond authorization if we depart from this location, 230 Main Street, to anywhere up on Putney Road or anywhere else. And so I also continue to believe that it's entirely possible that we could allow that process to move forward, negotiations to begin with property owners, finalize some of these details. And if that takes longer than the general fund budget, if it happens, for example, before July 1st, we could, vote to amend the budget. If it happens after, on into, next fiscal year, we've got $4 million in hand. We can begin the project and get a bond anticipation note putting the payments into next year's budget. But I do believe that it is somewhat problematic to be putting money into a budget for repayment of a bond which we have yet to receive authorization for.
Well, I think that Mr. Skoll's motion was really clear that it was either a bond or a note, and I think that the intent of the board is, at least the intent of the motion is way clearer, and I disagree with your position. Is there any other discussion about the motion? Jan, did you get it all written down?
Pretty close.
Could you read it back?
Pretty close. To include the first-year bond payment interest on $4.7 million on a bond or note to complete the 2 fire stations, plus $1 million earnest money to move forward for the police project.
Perfect.
John?
One thing, David, a bond or a note can only go out 5 years. So the interest is going to be substantially different in that situation than a 20-year bond.
Understand.
So, you know, to leave that kind of open doesn't really give me too much direction in what I should be putting in the budget.
Want to just say bond?
The most you can get, you can only get a 5-year note from a bank?
Right.
We should do a
Then
bond.
That's a no-brainer. Just do a bond.
And how much better, is the interest significantly better on a 5-year note?
Yeah, because it's a shorter term.
Right.
Right.
But a $4.7 million 5-year note is going to be a lot of
$50 a year.
That's going to be hefty.
hefty repayment schedule.
Right. And haven't we always done bonds more than?
Yes,
Okay,
for
so-
projects and for
So on a
things of
capital,
this size.
I have no problem with just leaving it as a bond. Dave, to amend your,
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to look at if, like, let me get down 8 years on 7.9 million. And I know you can't just subtract things, but there's $600,000 principal and interest we would pay that year in the 8th year. And we would be paying $600,000 every one of those years. And this is, we can't have this conversation right now. But sometimes, I mean, if the interest is enough better, we'd be paying another $200,000 for 5 years and then be done with it, as opposed to having another 15 years of paying $600,000. So it's, I mean, I think,
well, maybe leave it, and then we'll just do some
yeah, leave it in
research.
and we'll do the math when it's time to get
Right.
the money.
Leave the motion
And if
open.
there's not enough, we may have to,
So-
I'm very nervous.
Right now, you have the ability to look at either one.
Well, I can look at either one. With a note, you don't make any interest payment in the first year. You take out the note, you make the first principal and interest payment in the second year. So there'd be nothing in fiscal year 16. It would all be in 17 if it's a note. And then your first payment's going to be on 4.7 million, close to $1 million in principal plus the interest. And so that's a substantial impact on your tax rate, probably 10 cents or more. So yeah, with a note, 5-year note, there'd be nothing in fiscal 16. With a bond, it's only the interest in fiscal 16.
So we have to say bond then. Yeah, so could I amend my motion to say a bond and eliminate the note? Because it wouldn't be 7.9 either, so savings, I miss, the math is wrong.
Well, the $4.7 million is essentially the cost to build out the 2
Right.
fire stations and then committing $1 million worth of money towards acquiring property for police station. And that appears to be what you want to
Yep.
vote on now.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
So let's vote.
All right. Jan, please read that back once more without the note language.
To include the first-year bond interest on $4.7 million bond in order to complete the 2 fire stations, plus $1 million interest money to proceed with the police project.
Yep.
Earnest money.
Earnest money. Yep.
Earnest money.
All right. Is there any other discussion about that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nay?
Yeah.
So that carries 3-2.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Yeah.
move, we have a 5-minute recess.
Go for it.
Stretch our, everybody, stretch your legs,
Oh,
get up, get some blood moving in your bodies. And
Hey, there's donuts.
anything else?
So the next item on for discussion is pay-as-you-throw impacts. So I included that on this list of items to be discussed because I think it needs to be pointed out just once again as part of the budget discussion that we're taking out about, how much money is it, Patrick, that we're anticipating earning from bags?
Oh, I think somewhere around 389. Is that about right, John?
Yeah.
So we're adding $389,000 in revenue net effective to the budget from sales of bags. We do not yet have a mechanism in place for that sale of bags. That's something that has to be worked out going forward, but that's going to result in a net increase in the amount of money that people who are disposing of trash are going to have to pay. And now it also looks like we have to add an additional, how much is it, $30,000 to the budget to buy recycling garbage cans for downtown. So
Quick question.
I just wanted to include that on the list for discussion today. Donna?
The bag prices have not been finalized, is that correct?
Bag prices have not been finalized,
Because
so
I
we're
did
working with a projection.
I did some research, and the communities, our neighboring communities, charge much less per bag than our committee has proposed that we charge. So I just want to put that out, that I think when I would like to consider charging slightly less, which would decrease the cost to homeowners and tenants. Anyway, we're not going to get into that now, but...
Well, I think we should a little bit. Can you tell us how much your research showed?
Yeah, I think that at least in Massachusetts, so if I remember correctly, our pay-as-you-throw committee proposed, was it $3?
$2 and $3.
$2 and $3. And I believe that there's a $1 and maybe a $2 was the maximum amount for the larger bags in the Massachusetts communities that I researched. So it's considerably more expensive, our proposal.
The $2 and $3 recommendation is to be consistent with our immediate neighbors, neighboring towns. And if we were to lower the price, which we could do and would, then it would provide one benefit in that the cost of bags would be less, but then the transfer from the general fund to offset those costs which the bag prices cannot cover would increase. So the net effect, I'm not sure it would be saving people any real money.
Well, when you say immediate neighbors, it was Vernon and which other town?
Hinsdale, I believe, and yep, Vernon and Hinsdale.
All right, so right now Vernon and Hinsdale are charging $2 and $3 for 15 and a 33, right?
32 or 33.
15 and a 33-gallon bag. And it has yet to be determined what the exact cost will be. John?
Here's one of the areas that David Scholes was talking about where this whole climate could change with how we do our voting on and how we subsidize the MRF. So there's some impacts here that we really don't know yet because, again, as David pointed out, that we may change how we do our processing. I mean, we may try to go to a single stream system, and if that does happen, then that changes the whole climate of recycling and everything in this town. So it may not be as heavy of an impact on residents on how many bags they have to buy because they'll be doing a lot more recycling. There's so many little intricacies in this whole thing with pay-as-you-throw and the district and how we pay into it and how much we pay and what we rely on them for. So that whole thing is going to change within the next 6 months. I wanted to move it ahead quicker, as David knows. And so, again, there still may be some things that could happen between now and town meeting that affects the pay-as-you-throw system. So I just wanted to point that out, that there are some, and David, you've been to a lot more meetings than I have, you know, so.
And Patrick has too. I think the thing that's not going to change is we're going to have our assessment for the coming year. And unless the budget gets voted down and they redo it, that's what we're going to be paying. So the only thing that would happen is if we signed a separate contract, we'd still be paying our assessment and we'd be paying for that contract. So, you know, that would be the only change. And I don't think we would probably choose to do it that way. We'd probably try to do a gradual transition, like we talked about that last meeting about reorganizing the waste management district so that can be done. Or we'd have to enter a 2-year process of withdrawing from the district. Either way, the assessment's going to be in the budget.
Right. But there are some implications down the road that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think we'll see it this year.
Well, I would love to see it, but so that's.
Further to your point, Donna, for now, the budget involves, or the FY16 budgeting process includes a separate budget for solid waste that involves funding from the general fund in the amount of $555,000 as shown on page 18 of 18, and approximately $380,000 in revenue generated from the sales of bags at $2 and $3 a piece. If we change that dollar figure, it'll change the budget. But at this point, unless there's a motion, I think we're probably going to leave it at $2 and $3 projection for planning purposes at this point. Is there a motion to change that revenue at this point? All right. But we'll consider certainly when they return, the pay-as-you-throw committee returns, whether we should be charging a different amount for bags. Anything else about pay-as-you-throw? Dick?
Mr. Chairman, would you a little bit more clarity on the $30,000 expenditure for recycling things downtown? And because I guess I need to understand a little bit more about what they would do for the size of them and for who, because most of those buildings downtown have to provide recycling for themselves because they're apartment buildings and private doors. So I guess I'm not understanding what that money would be.
I'll very quickly explain that I was notified by the interim town manager about 10 days ago that as part of Act 148, one of the requirements was that all public trash cans need to have recycling bins associated with them. And so to buy heavy-duty downtown recycling garbage cans that are going to have a 10 or 20-year life cycle, like the ones that are currently on the street that don't get damaged in snowstorms and when they get hit by the grader. We have to spend $30,000. They're going to cost about $30,000.
Grader.
So does that answer your question?
So you're going to have to figure out how to put flowers on them.
We're going to special order them with flower boxes. He's right. That's what Patrick included. Ian?
David?
Yeah, Ian.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm on camera. I'm a citizen of I'm a citizen of Brattleboro, and I'm the guy who had problems with trash many years ago. Dick, I hope you forgive me for that when the town tried to go with pay-as-you-throw. I believe in pay-as-you-throw now, and I want to tell you the $2, $3, I think is perfectly fine. As a citizen, it's going to cost me about $104 because I do one small bag a week, and I do that because of your compost program. And I can't emphasize enough how amazing that compost program is. I talk it up to people in other towns. Like, I visited my brother in LA, and I said, come on, guys, you got to be on the, LA's behind us on this one. So I really have to say kudos to that. I remember going to the rink and getting my compost container. So that's my statement. My question then would be just an idea in terms of revenue. If compost becomes more and more successful, anyone can reduce their cost of trash by putting more into that compost bin, what's allowed. So I'm just curious if you have any ideas. The goal, of course, with pay-as-you-throw would also reduce the amount of waste. And so the question I would have is, do you understand the success of the program may mean that you're actually going to get less revenue? And then the second question would be, you mentioned the trash cans downtown needing recycling. I think the transportation center already has there's a model, one that already has the recycling in place. And just the question would be, I guess, at the parks and the recreation areas, would that figure cover that cost? Because those are public spaces with trash cans. So I'm just curious if you remembered the park specifically, and then maybe the recreational facility. I don't remember if there's trash there. So thank you.
Thanks. That's the first question. My understanding is that the pay-as-you-throw cost analysis has been done conservatively to anticipate we're going to get the revenue that we expect given increased recycling and composting. But it's really, John, isn't it fair to say just a projection at this point?
It's just a projection, but yes, the experience of other towns is that the solid waste is dropped by 50%. And we modeled that into our assumptions and built our revenues based on those assumptions.
And then, Patrick, if you could just speak to how many new bins would be purchased and where they'd be located for that $30,000.
Yeah, there are approximately 30 locations that presently have a trash can. Not all of them are right in downtown. Some of them continue on towards Canal Street. There's Plenty Park. So this would be to be able to purchase, like you said, the bulletproof trash cans similar to the ones we have now, and to provide side-by-side recycling to solid waste collection. Certainly aware that public facilities, for example, this building, need to be able to provide recycling opportunities, and our other public and recreation buildings need to as well. So that's something we're aware of and working towards.
And can I ask a question
Okay.
about that? It's like paper and cans and all that kind of stuff? Or is it just...
I have a question into the Agency of Natural Resources at this point in time. It's my appreciation that we need to have a recycling collection next to each trash can. I don't think they're going to say we need to also have cardboard collection, on Main Street. I think that's more of a residential or business product. I think it's reasonable to expect you're going to have people walking around Main Street with a bottle or a can. They're going to need a place to put it. Large-scale cardboard collection.
But what about paper? Like right now, the one on Plenty Park, and Dick will probably can tell this too, you can only put cans or bottles. There's nothing for paper. So I think paper is the question.
It is the question, and we're looking into that.
That's why a single stream system is the way to go.
Excellent. So for right now, essentially, we're including $30,000 more in the budget to make a accommodation for those receptacles, whatever they may look like. Any more on pay-as-you-throw or other Act 148 requirements? All right. So, town hall renovations. Can we please hear, given that we have to have a budget finalized, what is the current status of information we have about town hall renovations that may or may not be necessary in the time frame?
Yes. The approximate budget figure for all of the renovations that are being asked of us at this location remains in the neighborhood of about $450,000. That includes a series of adaptations to the building. It includes a new fire panel, which is part of the fire alarm system. It includes a comprehensive fire sprinkler system for the building. It includes several alterations to the egress paths and the stairwells to help isolate them. And it also includes the wherewithal to I don't know how you would describe it, but anytime a pipe or something like that penetrates a wall, this would be to seal that to prevent fire going from one room to another through a place like any wall penetrations. So there has been a good deal of discussion with the Division of Fire Safety about our ability to phase this in and to, or whether we need to do it all at once. There are probably some, if we're going to go ahead with the project, there are probably some cost benefits to doing it all at once. However, the Division of Fire Safety would be open to a plan for phasing it in. And the one that they have been satisfied by is one where the town essentially, in the very near future, in this fiscal year, begins the process of upgrading the fire panel and upgrades the sprinkler system in next fiscal year, and then in the following year does the wall penetrations and the egress paths. Recently, John brought up, hey, what if we move somewhere else? And you know, could we conceivably relocate our operations out of this building and then not do the upgrades? And I can certainly follow up with the Division of Fire Safety and see if they're accepting of that type of plan. I think what I anticipate is folks will want to know specific, direct consequences of our timing as it relates to Division of Fire Safety. For example, it would be nice if we could say, we've got up until such and such a date to do X, and if we don't, they're going to you know, shut the doors on us. I think the Division of Fire Safety is disinclined to provide us with that information, and you know, has suggested to some degree the more definitive the order, probably the less we'll like it, but they are comfortable with a phasing approach, as I briefly sort of outlined there, and certainly I'll reach out to them and find out if we were to relocate, and that was our definitive plan, could we avoid the project entirely? I just don't have the answer to that at this moment.
And the costs are for the fire panel, for the sprinkler, and then for the egress wall penetrations?
The estimated cost is about $450 for the whole thing.
Right, but we're talking about phasing it over 3
Yep.
years, so what are the individual costs? Do you know?
I don't have that at the moment.
All right, well, if we're being asked to authorize money to do the fire panel and the sprinkler as part of this year's budget, we need to have those figures.
Yep.
Like for today's meeting, but if not, as soon as you can get it to us, please.
Yep.
Other inquiries about town hall renovations? Anybody have a view about how we would want to try to make accommodation for those? I mean, it's hard to do without the numbers. Rod?
Before you continue, can I just clarify? My understanding is that figure of $400,000 is the quote from one contractor, and it doesn't account for the need for various offices in the building to relocate and reestablish themselves so that the work can actually take place. And so before you finalize that figure, I'd be interested to see what, if any, costs were likely to be incurred. So for instance, in our office, we would be required to relocate. It would involve some level of network rerouting and other costs. And I don't know what those costs would be, but it doesn't seem to me as if there's been a provision for that.
Based on my discussion with Mr. Horton, and I think he's probably pretty well informed about these types of projects, relocation really wouldn't be necessary, and that the project could be done effectively around us.
All right, well, if we're being asked to include money in the budget for renovations to town hall, like I've said before, it involves significant public policy questions about use of the building and
relocation of various services from the building, and we need a specific plan in order to be able to consider it if we're going to be including it in the budget, and if we're going to decide where the money's coming from. So as soon as possible, please.
Can
John?
I just ask one thing? What is the board's feeling on relocating out of this building? I was just wondering if that's even something that's on anybody's mind, or, because I really don't want to put $2 into this building. So I just don't know what people are thinking about. And I know it's a process, but it's also $450,000 that if we don't have to put into this, that's a substantial amount of money. So I would love to hear back from the state of Vermont whether they would even consider prolonging the inevitable, and giving us a little bit of time to research what our options are of moving out of this building.
I think that it's an interesting inquiry, and I think it's important to have the discussion. I think that it being 8:45, given the other work that needs to be done, it's not the time now to have a discussion about the potential implications of closing down this building and what could happen here. It's just, we don't have the time right now. So I'm going to move on from that discussion. With all deference to your hand being up, because we're not going to have a discussion about whether we're staying in or moving out of town hall. We need a specific plan that we're being asked to approve for how much money to put in the budget or to get from another source to do work to town hall, and then we'll consider those other alternatives. But right now, we don't even have a plan that's been proposed for this year's budget. The next item is capital expenses, and there were 6 items that we were specifically going to consider for either including or not including in this year's budget, and then we were going to try to determine where the money was coming from, if they were being included. The first one was the air packs.
Isn't that already included?
Yes,
Yeah.
and we were asked just to address specifically whether it was staying in, and to point out again what was the source. So Mike, if you could please just tell us what air packs are in the budget for purchase this year. And my understanding is that we've saved almost $19,000 on those items. So if you could please tell us how that happened.
We currently have 34 air packs. Most of that number is driven by NFPA regulations. Our oldest ones were purchased in, we have nine of those 34 that were purchased in 1999. So as you can see, a very important piece of equipment. They're getting some age and a lot of use on them. The quoted price that I have today is $235,042. And I don't, basically that was a rework of the initial quote that I got, and that's why it came down.
And as I understand it, we applied last year for grant money for these air packs from the state or the federal government, or the federal government, and that was turned down.
Yes, we were not successful.
And so we've included in the bonds and notes funding for a note to purchase those air packs and to finance them over how many years? 3. Over a 3-year period. We're on page 7 through 8 of 18, and if someone could please give me the specific detail of the amount of money that we're committing to pay for air packs this year and the 3 following years. or just over the 3 years in total?
John, do you have that number?
I don't have that number here. The total amount borrowed would be the $235,000. That's what the principal and interest is based on. I'd have to go and look up the exact numbers. I don't have that, but 235 over 3 years, about $70,000, $75,000 a year in principal, and then the interest on top of that.
All right. So it's about $90,000 this year and each of the next 2 years to replace those air packs.
Yeah.
The air packs are from 99 through what vintage?
The newest ones were purchased in 2002.
2002. And you've indicated that it's better to have one uniform set of air packs for maintenance purposes?
Maintenance and user. So they're grabbing, they're not guessing which air pack they have on.
All right. And so we probably should include a specific motion so that there's no question about the inclusion of this item in the budget, although it's been written in. So,
Can I just ask a quick
Yeah.
question? So we're saving, was it 9,000? How much are we saving?
I don't have the first quote in my binder.
Okay.
It was 288,000.
With the original
288.
I thought it was 238.
No, 288.
Okay, so does that make sense? Like the note principal has gone from 199,000 down to 181,000. Is that because of the air packs? It's gone down 19,000 or 18,000?
that's what it says on the front sheet here.
Oh, is that, I'm sorry.
17,584 in principal and 1,300 in interest.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's all air pack.
That's all air pack.
Oh, okay.
All right, so are there other questions or comments about the air pack item? So I move that we endorse the inclusion in the fiscal year 2016 budget of principal and interest payments on the purchase of 34 air packs for the fire department, financed over a 3-year period. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So that's just an endorsement that we are going forward with the air pack purchase in this coming fiscal year, and that we're going to include the money in the budget. The next item had to do with the cruiser, and to refresh everybody's recollection, the capital plan provides for replacement of 2 cruisers annually. Chief, how many cruisers do we have altogether?
9.
And what's the replacement cycle recommended?
Well, once every 5 years, we let it go out there.
Last year, or this current fiscal year, we replaced how many?
1.
What's the preferred replacement schedule?
Every 5 years, or we're looking at, we have 2 cruisers down there that are currently 75,000 miles on them, and by the time next fiscal year rolls around, they'll be up into the 90,000 miles.
So we prefer to keep a 2-year cycle. I mean, a 2 per year cycle. And when we got the budget, it only provided for 1 cruiser to be replaced this year. So there was an inquiry whether we should add
It's $42,000.
$42,000 to go back to a 2 cruiser per year replacement cycle.
Can I just ask a question?
Okay.
Because the one that, there's the 2008 Charger, which is in the budget, but then it's a 2011. So that's not with, so if it was a 5-year cycle, we'd be replacing that in 2016. But are you saying there's just so much mileage on it?
That is correct. And the one that is the 2008, for the longest time, that was used as an unmarked vehicle, so patrol was not actively taking that out. So that's why you see the discrepancy between the 2008 and 2011.
Okay, so
we're looking at the year of the call.
Okay.
But normally, you're pretty much maxed out. Your fourth year going into your fifth year at that.
The 2011 vehicle, to replace it in the FY16 budget is the 5-year cycle.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I was adding, like, saying it's only, I was saying it's only, right, that's right,
But this is planning for 2016.
Yep. I was just thinking it's only 3 years old.
I understood. I totally. John?
So, I'm going back to, this is where we have to rethink our thinking. If we're going to be, and I know you guys are going to, but this is, because we're putting police fire back on the table, this is where we have to rethink, and Mr. DeGray pointed that out. We have to make things last a little longer, and we may not be in the correct cycle for replacing things. So this is where I think we have to rethink how much burden do we want to put on the taxpayers on 1 year. So I just think that we have to rethink it. So I'm not in favor of putting a lot of things back into the capital. So that's all I'm saying, is that I just think we have to rethink how we look at how we replace items and how we keep up with the systems that we've had, and that maybe we let things, we just let them get a little older, and we try to work with what we have for a little bit to lessen the burden. And I think everybody has to think outside of the box, and everybody has to give a little bit. And again, I'll say it again, I'm the first one to ever say that I don't want taxes to go up and I want to be fiscal, but at some point everybody's got to give a little bit and take a little bit. So I think we have to rethink cruisers, graders, but that's just where I'm at. Donna had a question.
Kate?
Well, Donna was first.
Oh, Donna?
I'm in favor of keeping the 2008 cruiser in the budget for replacing. I am not in favor of replacing the 2011 at this point.
Kate?
I added up, because I think we also need to look at this in the big picture, the cruiser, the paving, the sidewalks, and the windows. If I added up what we were talking about, is $187,000 putting in, if I've added this right. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's also looking in the context, that context as well, that, and if we do it, are we taking it out of the undesignated funds? It's where it's coming from, do we need it, and looking at it in its totality. So I'm not answering the question, but I just look at it that we are adding something that adds up back in.
It definitely adds up, adding back in. The problem with the cruiser is that we only got one last year. We eliminated one from last year's budget, so we're already a year behind and off the capital plan, which is part of having stability and not making arbitrary decisions, but making planned and thoughtful decisions. So, I mean, I understand about the, there are a lot of other things in here that we can look at. We can also look at the capital fund, but I think that since we didn't meet our obligation or our commitment last year, that we need to meet it this year. Although I may be outvoted on this one.
Anybody else want to speak to the item of the cruiser? I mean, we needed to, yes ma'am, I'll be with you in 1 second. We needed to organize this discussion in some sort of a meaningful way, and we're not going to get to the surplus until after we deal with these individual items, and whether we dip into the surplus may have an impact. Whether we dip into the surplus, and if so, to what extent, may have an impact on these individual spending items. But I don't know how else to deal with the discussion other than going in order.
So we will.
Remind me of your name.
Yeah, Dale. And listening to this and using common sense, these are emergency vehicles also, and we really need to try to keep them up. Like you were saying, you're already behind. Those are things you need to keep up, the fire department and the police department. And if you get behind on them, and they get broken down, it might be your life on the line somewhere. Okay? Think about that.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion on the cruiser?
I'm sort of conflicted because I'm going back on where we're taking this money from. I mean, this is my problem right now with this, like going individually. I just don't know where, you know, will we use surplus to pay for something else? So I just don't know how I feel about going through and voting on this stuff, and we really have no idea if we've got the funds somewhere else that can balance this out. That's just my problem right now with this.
I certainly contemplated the possibility of walking through all the items and then talking through surplus, potential cuts, and the local option sales tax before coming back and voting on any of these individual items. So if that makes more sense to everybody, that's why we tried to put this together in some organized way. All right, so the next would be the paving money. The paving budget called for a cut from $300,000 to $200,000. And we talked about simply level funding the amount of paving. Steve, what was the yearly?
Just basically the impact when we go to $200,000 a year at the proposed. What that means is basically we pave less than a mile of road in a year, 0.91. And at that rate, it's basically once you pave the road, you don't go back for 59 years. If we go up to 300,000, then it changes those numbers. You get like 1.37 miles, and also it reduces the amount of time to 39 years. So they sound like big numbers, but they're the reality. This 200,000, I believe, is about the same we were funding in 1996.
So you said it was a 52-year cycle to a
59-year cycle to a 39-year cycle.
All right, very good. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments at this point about the paving inquiry? Everybody knows what the issues are. Okay, the next one is the sidewalks. We have a $25,000, I think, or $30,000 carryover in sidewalks, and then the question was whether we were going to add to it to do other sidewalk work. In addition to the substantial East Side of Main Street project that's grant funded, although I understand some of that grant funding has fallen off the grid.
Yes. That's correct.
Maybe you could speak to us a little bit about what's happened to the grant funding for the East
Side. You have the Main Street project, which is moving forward. Some of the money is, what was it, 47.5 has dropped off. But still, we'll have a pretty decent project there on Main Street on the east side. So I guess the question is, do you want to be doing another capital sidewalk replacement in town? And it's really up to the board. I mean, the sidewalks are really no different than the roads. There's a long span there. Given the fact that you are replacing a large section with grant money on Main Street, it may make sense at this time to forego other repairs. We still have money in the budget that you're aware of for repairs.
Remember how much?
It's approximately 10,000. So there's money for basic repairs and keeping up with the problems.
So 10,000 does 100 feet?
It's $100 a foot. And that's just in repairs.
But the 10K is for repair. There's also money in the capital budget
for replacement of Main Street.
Right.
But not for any of the other.
That's right.
Because Main Street, I mean, it's nice that it's going to be replaced, but I wouldn't consider that an area that really needs to be replaced, whereas there are a lot of other sidewalks.
To give you an example, we did a section on Canal Street from Bird Street up to Maple Street. That expended the full $30,000 that we had for the year capital.
So let's be clear, we have 10K in the operating budget for sidewalk repair. And then we have additional money that we're contemplating putting in the capital budget.
That's right.
For sidewalk replacement.
Right. The question was, do you want to reconstitute the capital fund? And there was a discussion that maybe we should forego that since we're doing other sidewalks in town already, like Main Street. So we're not going to be doing other replacement, but is this a good year maybe to make that sacrifice, I guess is the question. I mean, we certainly would love the funds to go do more sections, but given the fact that we are doing a large sidewalk replacement, that's more than we normally do in probably 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So it's a tough one to swallow.
Anybody have any questions about the sidewalk inquiry?
Just about, I recall the number of people that have come over the last couple of years and talked about the condition of the sidewalk, mostly handicapped people, people in wheelchairs or elderly people. And I just don't see how we can ignore that, ignore the really degraded parts. And taking a year off sounds fine, but it just means they'll be that much worse next year. I think we should make some, and I'd like to see the whole 75,000 there, but I understand is there 25,000 that's carrying over from this year?
That was my understanding, that we have $25,000 carryover in the capital, anticipated carryover from 2015 to
But
16.
that more than likely will be going towards Main Street too.
Right.
Depending on how that all balances out.
So that's gone too. So,
All right, well, that's the inquiry. We're not voting on them until after we talk about the rest of it. Is there other discussion at this point about that sidewalk money? Going to be a time when we're going to have to make a decision.
Oh, I'm just confused about it, that's all.
It's coming soon.
get it all up there on
Right,
the
Gibson
board.
Aiken Center windows. Carol, you want to just briefly remind us what that inquiry was?
We have 135 windows at the Gibson Aiken Center. What we would be requesting here, if we were to replace all of them, it costs over $120,000. We're requesting to phase it out, putting $30,000 in the first year, which would allow us to replace all the windows in the gymnastics room. If you look at your windows behind you or behind me here, they're about double the size that are behind you, and there are 12 window panes within each one, single window panes. So you might as well just chuck quarters, dollar bills right out the window on those. That $30,000 would replace all those windows and would allow us to replace 20 what we would call high priority windows in and around the center that fulfill that $30,000.
At this point, we don't have a specific figure about how much money we would save over what period of time
I do
by
not,
replacing those
no.
windows?
No, I've asked, but it's hard to put a dollar amount on that.
Inquiries about the windows?
Just, I want to put that in the budget too, and I'm going to vote in favor of that. I think though, if you ask, did you inquire with the Energy Committee? Because they got some guys with some spreadsheets that.
No, I did not speak with the Energy Committee.
I mean, it's just, to me, it's not so much a figure. It's, you're throwing money out the window. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. But what I'm amazed at is that you can replace that many windows for $30,000. I mean, are they vinyl replacement or are they?
I got an estimate from them on that.
Yeah, that's why I said. I mean, that's remarkable.
Different areas, but that was just for the gymnastics room plus 20 windows on top of that.
Right. I mean, that's a good estimate. But
Other comments, questions, discussion about the windows? Pool. Carol again.
Okay, per your request, I reached out to Weston and Sampson Aquatic Group to see how that $400,000 could be broken down, if it could be broken down over a 3-year phase project. Essentially, there are 3 components, large components to the renovations. The fleet, as we have spoken about, the renovations of the bathhouse, as we have spoken about, and the renovations to the wading pool. Yes, we could break those up over a 3-year period. You're looking at addressing the leaks. You're talking, we would need to put into the budget about $165,000. Renovations to the bathhouse would be approximately $75,000, and the renovations to the wading pool would be about $120,000. So that's how you could spread that out. I know that as a board, you had a priority or an interest in addressing leaks and bathhouse renovations. If you were to ask me my opinion, I would say, let's go for the leaks, let's go for the wading pool renovations, and then go for the bathhouse. Because, the wading pool, the leaks are the leaks, yes, we're losing a large amount of water. The kiddie pool, there's some new regulations that are in there, and then, we need to meet ADA standards. So I would put the renovations of the wading pool over the bathhouse, as much as aesthetically what people want to see. They want to see that bathhouse first. The citizens would love to see that bathhouse first, because that's the first thing to see. But in thinking logically and how we manage and what we are in addressing our issues, I'd rather see it in the order that I just said. But I want to give you the facts and let you make your decisions.
Anybody on the board have any comments about that?
Carol, could you just repeat, to address the leaks, what would that dollar figure be? I'm sorry, I spaced out for a second.
$165,000.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody on the board with respect to the pool? Go ahead, John.
No, I do, but I don't want to sound like an ogre here. But because I did voice interest in trying to find the leak, because that's a huge amount of water that's being lost, and where the heck's it going? But in light of the overall picture of where we're at right now, can you do a fundraising effort into that? Can we, and it's not closing it for a year, it's closing it for how many weeks is it open during the summer? 6, 7? 9. So it's a 9-week period that we're closing it. Is that something that's feasible? It's not in the best interest of the overall picture of Brattleboro, but is that something we could feasibly do? And do a campaign and not have it come out of capital expenditure. So I'm just trying to think of different ways of making all this work. But that's one thing that came to me, and it has changed in a couple weeks for me, which things do, because we have different lights on things. So I'm just wondering what the board's thought is on something like that, or how we go about coming up with the money for that.
Well, if I may respond, we have been losing water for years. Another year of losing water is another year of losing water. I don't think it would be in the best interest of Brattleboro to close the pool, even if it is only for 9 weeks. 9 weeks is the 9 weeks that school is out. 9 weeks, there are many kids in Brattleboro with over 50%, closer to 60% of the children and families in Brattleboro receiving free and reduced hot lunch. Living Memorial Park, not just the pool, but Living Memorial Park, our programs and facilities are their summer programs. So I think it's important. Yes, we have some very difficult decisions to be making, and I wouldn't want to be sitting in your chairs up there. But I would not encourage you to close the pool, even if you say it's only for 9 weeks, because 9 weeks is the entire summer. And it's 8,000 visits at the pool. So I think that's really important to put into that process. There are people that utilize the pool are not the people that are able to go away on weekend, long week, 2-week vacation, camping trips, vacation trips. And their memories, their summer memories of summer are developed at Living Memorial Park.
Donna?
I'm not at all in favor of closing the pool for 9 weeks. I wonder, is the leakage problem increasing every year, or is it staying about the same? Do you have any data on that? If we let it go for another year, are we losing more water?
It's been about the same, it's been about the same for the past couple of years. If you drive by the pool today, the pool is full of water. You'll see where the leaking stops, just about 3 inches, 4 inches below the gutter.
Okay.
It's all in that first. And after talking with Weston Sampson, there's probably some with the piping from out to the main drain and all while the pool is in operation. So that's one of the areas that they're addressing with that with addressing the leaking is replacing that pipe, because that piping's from the original piping from 1957.
Okay, thank you.
Other people from the board?
I just want to reinforce what we just heard about who uses the pool. There's also the swim team that uses it and contributes a fair amount to the cost of running it. But it's a social service. It really is. If those kids weren't there, if they weren't in the rec programs and going to the pool and spending all the time at the park, which is why we have a park, they would be doing other things, maybe swimming in the river, maybe not, certainly unprotected, but probably other things we'd rather not even consider. And I think if you, to look at it, to compare like another constituency, it would be like if we told all the soccer players and the softball players and anybody that uses any of the fields or other facilities that they have to mow. We can't afford that anymore. So you have to mow this yourself. You have to stripe yourself. You have to rake it all yourself. The town can't afford to do that. All we can do is service the parts of the park that are available to everybody. That no specific constituency is going to get these services. And I think the people who would be affected by that, I think, could probably handle it a lot better than the people who would be affected by not providing the services in the pool. They're people that really don't have resources or other options, and it's just really crucial to the health of the community. And it's actually, I think the average between the three schools of the free reduced lunch is 63% now. So it's actually up. And well, anyway, you'll hear more about that at town meeting.
Well, I can't support putting any money into the pool right now. And I think, to me, it's one of these things that we need to figure out what, Carol just gave us for the first time what the priorities would be. So, I think we need to explore, and I know we always say this to Carol, is private fundraising, and I know we keep saying that to you, but, this is one of those things that people are more apt to give to help with the pool than to buy a grader. So I wish we could have a plan that, was how much money does the town actually have to put in? Are there private sources of funding? So at this point, I'm not going to vote to put any money in the pool because I think we need to think about it in the context of some bigger pool plan.
There's not been any proposal to strike the operation money to keep the pool open. This is really a question of making capital investment in repair of the pool, and I haven't heard that it's an emergency that's going to require the pool being shut down, just that we're losing water in the short term and the medium term while the pool is open. So I'm in favor of leaving the money for the pool in the budget and deferring the capital investment in the pool until we can develop a plan to determine if there's a Save Our Pool fundraising effort that can be developed now that we're finished with the Build Our West River Park efforts. And let's see where we go from there. Dick, did you want to say something?
I was looking at the revenue line item for the pool, Carol, and I can't recall, is the pool run as a loss leader or does it generate revenue for the municipality? It's run as a loss leader, correct?
It's a loss leader. There's just not a number of weeks in a pool in the Northeast that you can operate.
That's the next issue that I have with the pool, is that I understand the investment in the pool, but the pool the last several years is closed the middle of August. And for me, that pool should be open from the beginning of June until after Labor Day weekend. And the excuse, so to be, is that we can't find lifeguards. Well, I guess I would argue that is that there are lifeguards out there that I'm sure that if we put some effort into finding, rather than just college kids who go back to school, that pool should be open, especially if we're talking about servicing a population of lower demographics in terms of financial need. They still have to find something to do for 2 weeks. And usually the weather is quite warm. Actually, a couple of years ago, it was actually really hot, and the pool was closed. So I think that I do agree with David in terms of putting this off for a year, but as you explore that in doing so, and other funding sources like the Nelson Whittington Fund, you should also look at expanding the hours to the pool to take it past Labor Day, after Labor Day.
Thank you. Anything else about the pool?
All right, so having gone through those 6 capital items, 5 have yet to be voted on. The next item for consideration is the surplus. So to refresh everybody's recollection, the audited financials indicate that we have $1,962,900 approximately in undesignated, unreserved funds. That's after an insurance payment and tax relief that have to be taken out of the total of $2,535,900 and change. So we have about $1,963,000 in the bank that's available for spending should we choose to do so, and we adopted a guideline to keep 10% of that available, which would be approximately $1,580,000 or $590,000 at 10%, which means that we currently have approximately $374,000 in surplus money in the bank in excess of the 10% guideline that we adopted 3 or 4 years ago. So the question for the board is, do you want to take some of that $374,000 and apply it either to capital expenses or to defraying the cost of operations in fiscal year 16? And if so, how much? Dave?
I'll start. Well, I just did all the adding up, and I included $50,000 for sidewalk, and I included the $75,000 for the bathhouse, because again, I feel like with infrastructure things, we keep putting it off and off and off and off. And it came up to $100,000 more for paving, $42,000 for cruiser, $30,000 for windows, $50,000 for sidewalks, and that's just my arbitrary number, and $75,000 for the bathhouse. It's $437,000. And if we kept 9% in reserve instead of 10% in reserve, we would have $530-some thousand. So we could pay for all of those additional capital improvements and still have over 9% in our capital reserve fund. And I've consistently supported the 10%, but on the advice of the League of Cities and Towns and the example of what happened to towns that didn't have a decent reserve when Tropical Storm Irene came through. And but again, as everyone here has said, it's a difficult time. We have to have compromise. We have to compromise. We have to make some adjustments. And I don't see anything on that list that we don't need. I don't see anything on that list that will not cost more in the long run, with possible exception of the cruiser. We might get lucky and not have to put whatever a year's worth of payments on $42,000 is into repairing one of them, but that would go real fast if it was a transmission or an engine. And the savings that we would have with the windows, and I think the pool is beautiful, and the only problem, obviously the water's problem, but when you go there and watch the kids swim, you go in and swim, it looks beautiful, it feels beautiful, it's a really positive, cheerful place. It doesn't look like it really needs anything. It looks like it's in really good shape, except when you go in the bathhouse. So I have a feeling that improving the bathhouse might actually draw some more people in and improve the revenues a little bit. But nonetheless, it's an investment that we have to make, and probably sooner rather than later. So I suggest that we have a look at approving the things that I just mentioned, and taking it from the reserve fund and accepting having less than 10%, a little less than 10% in that fund.
Can you read those over again?
Yeah, 100,000. Put the 100,000 back in for paving that was reduced. $42,000 for the cruiser. 30,000. I think it was, Carol, was 30,000 for the windows.
Correct.
Yep.
50,000 into the sidewalk fund, which is, only 2/3 of what should be there. And then 75 for the bathhouse.
Because what did you say it added up to?
Well, I got 437. That doesn't mean it's right.
Wait, does that include the air? I'm wondering if you're including the air packs.
The air packs is
They're already in.
separately.
So that's not in the 400,000 that you've done?
No.
No.
Oh, because I don't
No,
think that. Okay.
because that's, even I think that's $70,000 this year, but that's already in the numbers, right?
Right, but I'm just trying to.
So far, I've written onto the sheet, a cruiser's 42K. To bring the paving back to level funding would be 100, and they're asking for $30,000 in the Gibson Aiken Center windows. The sidewalks, and those numbers have remained relatively consistent in our discussions, so I wrote those in permanent marker on the paper.
Yep.
I left out sidewalks and pool for now,
Because I made those up.
because that's a moving target. Like the police fire for some reason.
Well, and just add to that, the 140 that we're putting in for the police, for the interest on the first year of the 4.7 is less than a 1% effect on the budget.
So thank you for those comments. Are there other members of the board who want to speak to the surplus and to how that might be spent and applied?
You know my feeling on the surplus. I think it's sitting in there, and we should use it. I have no problem with,
for now, thank you.
That it's an arbitrary number, the 10%, and so I feel if it's in there, if we have $500,000, in reserve, I'm fine with that, so, because it gets built up on the backs of the taxpayers, so use it to the best way possible, and if it is taking care of the capital, then I totally agree with David Skoll's assumption, and I'm going by your math, because I haven't added it all up, but if it's $500,000 that we have to take out, or whatever it is, whatever the number is, let's use it, because that's the best use of that money. So I'm totally in favor of that motion.
Can I tell you math-wise what I get and what Patrick got too, is we got $297,000.
For David's suggestion?
Yeah.
So did I. I added the 140 into the police fire, and that made it 437.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
So
Okay.
we could cover all of that from the capital, or we could buy a grader.
Well,
There's that, too.
And
Kate?
no, that's what I was wondering. What else? Is it just this list that we're using, or is it a better use to put that money towards a grader? Not a second grader, but...
Well, it's the second grade.
It's replacing the
Right,
second.
that's what I
grade.
mean, yeah,
Right.
the grader that's here.
Why can't we do both?
Donna?
So for me, the top, yes, I'm in favor of using that money. And I would be willing to consider retaining only 9%. I would not want to go any deeper. I would not want to cut any more deeply into that. I'm in favor of replacing the grader. I think we need that. I am not in favor of doing a makeover on the bathhouse. At this point, I'm not in favor of putting any money this year into the pool situation, nor am I in favor of closing it down for any of those weeks. In fact, I'm with Mr. DeGray on wanting to be able to extend those hours and to have it go through the summer. Definite yes for the cruiser, the 2008. I am not in favor of spending additional money on sidewalks this year. I think we have our hands full with Main Street, even though I acknowledge the issues with the sidewalk, and it's also a priority. I definitely am in favor of putting $30,000 in to begin the window replacement process at Gibson Aiken. That feels like energy saving, it feels essential, and I would like us to do that for the next couple of years as well until they're all replaced. So that's where I stand.
Excellent. Other people on the board?
Can
Kate?
I just want to clarify the sidewalk situation. So you don't think we need any? You think we can?
I'm just suggesting, since here we are, we're talking every year we come back and we're squeezing this project, that maybe this is a good year because we're doing our capital investment in our sidewalks, that maybe this is a good year to I would always support replacing more sidewalk, but I understand, the difficulties that represents.
So my position on the surplus and on the capital, first off, I'm in favor of voting, I'll vote in favor of putting the money for a cruiser at 42, the paving at 100, and 30 for the windows. I'm not in favor at this point of capital improvements to the pool, and I would not vote in favor at this point of putting more capital into the sidewalks. In terms of the total capital, those three, or total money from the surplus, there's 170 from for those three additional items that can be added back. I'm concerned about dipping more into the surplus at this point, given the way substantial other potential expenses that we have to bear. We may have to pay cash money to make fire safety, life safety work, to do life safety work here at Town Hall, because there is no plan to empty this building, and there is no plan for what we're going to do for town operations other than being here. So that is a potential project. The Elliott Street Bridge has got a hole in it. It's reduced to one lane, and it needs to be fixed. And nowhere in this budget discussion have we talked about putting money aside to fix the Elliott Street Bridge or to replace it, and whether we want to do a 100-year replacement and plan to totally replacing that bridge, or whether it's going to be $50,000 or $300,000 to put a new deck on. But that's money that's going to have to be spent. I don't think there is a single bridge in town that's really more integral to getting across the whetstone from one side of town to the other. We haven't talked about it at all. We also have a significant potential other expenditures we might have to make in connection with the police fire. So dipping more into the surplus at this point is problematic for me. I would vote in favor of $320,000 from the surplus, which is 172 for those three capital items, and then the 150, which is the money that the other board members have voted to put in for the money on moving forward with the police fire. So that's 320. But I would prefer to have the motion worded so that the board has the authority to spend up to a certain amount of money from the surplus to defray capital or operational expenses, so that when we ask for authority from town meeting about that, that the motion is worded broadly enough to recognize that there's going to be significant financial analysis that's going to be done when the new town manager gets here in 3 weeks, and so that we can decide how best to apply that money with the benefit of that analysis. So that's where I'm at.
So can we say, using that analysis, can we say 500,000 that
you can
that we have available?
If whatever emotion you want to make, I just said what my
I've
position
been adding
was.
all these things up and trying to keep up with what we're adding in, what we're adding out. And, I do agree with you on that we have things that are looming. But again, to me, the surplus is there to use. It's that rainy day thing, and it's raining, so.
So what
I'm just coming up with a figure.
What I'm going to suggest at this point is that we walk through each of the 5 capital items and vote on them, and then we vote at this point. Either we can vote today or we can vote at our next meeting on the amount at this point that we want to make available from the surplus, but it won't be a final motion as to the language of the article, because we need to talk with town attorney about that, and we're not finalizing the warning at this point.
So that's what I would suggest procedurally. Are there other comments from people on the board about that?
I just want to make one comment, and this may be premature, but I just need to make this so everybody perfectly understands. I may vote to put some of these in the budget because I want people to know that I think these are important, but that does not mean I will be voting in favor of the final budget. So I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Oh, it's clear.
I agree with that. Totally. Anybody else on the board? Anybody, any of the town, any of the department heads or the interim town manager? Dick?
Yeah. You end up, well, maybe I save my comment after you vote, but you're talking about taking $150,000 and applying it towards the discussion that we had earlier. There is a potential for the budget to be voted down, and if the budget had voted down, then you'd have to revisit that allocation of money, correct?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want it to sit there and have happen like what happened to the skating rink in terms of we have the surplus money that we put in, and then we end up having it bite us back in the ensuing year because you don't have that same amount of money. So I am concerned about being specific about what it's used for.
I think one theme that has permeated our discussion is that many things appear to be up in the air at this point. I know. So, is there any further discussion about any of these items?
No, let's vote.
So, first motion is to add a second cruiser, add funds for purchase of a second cruiser into the FY16 budget. So I move to add funds for purchase of a second cruiser into the FY16 capital budget. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of adding $42K into the capital budget for purchase of a second cruiser in FY16, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That carries 5-0, I guess. All those, so I next move to add $100,000 more into the FY16 capital budget for paving, making that total amount $300,000 rather than $200,000.
Making the total amount what?
I move to amend the FY16 capital budget by adding $100,000 more for capital paving for a total of $300,000 capital paving in the FY16 capital budget. I think I said capital about 12 times though.
Yeah. I'm still a little confused on where this money's coming from.
Well, we can only do it in steps.
Okay.
So
all right.
that is a good question, yeah.
Okay. Just
If we vote down taking it from the surplus,
Yep.
it'll be coming out of taxes. And Kate may still vote against the budget.
Right.
Donna?
And this means that the paving would happen every 39 years as opposed to 59 years. So that's what we're voting on,
Right.
correct? Okay.
Excellent. Is there any further discussion about that motion to increase the paving budget? Hearing none, all those in favor of increasing the FY16 capital paving from $200,000 to $300,000, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next motion is to increase the sidewalk capital budget item. Does somebody want to make a number? Because
Yeah, I said $50,000. I move that we put $50,000 into the sidewalk, Department of Public Works sidewalks improvement, for replacement capital budget.
all right, we have a motion to include $50,000 in the FY16 sidewalk replacement line item. Is there any further discussion about the sidewalks? Hearing none, all those, yes ma'am?
Yeah, are those the sidewalks downtown, or are they the ones going out towards West Brattleboro, which all that's going to be redone anyways in the next few years?
The question at this point is just to put $50,000 in money into the capital budget for sidewalk replacement or not, with
the location of any replacement to be determined later. You understand? Did I answer your question? Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of increasing or creating a $50,000 in sidewalk money in the FY16 capital budget, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. That's defeated 1-4. I next move to include $30,000 in the FY16 capital budget for replacement of windows at the Gibson Aiken Center. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Have they put solar on the building to help with the heating instead of just replacing windows? Because it might be more cost effective to do the solar instead.
That has not been part of the recommendation, Bob, from the quote we got from the local vendor.
So maybe a little bit more research.
Sir.
Any further discussion about the motion to add $30,000 for the Gibson Aiken Center windows? All those in favor of adding $30,000 to the FY16 capital budget to replace windows at Gibson Aiken Center, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. I guess the next question is whether there's a motion to put any capital money into the pool in this budget.
I move we put $75,000 into the Recreation and Parks budget for improvements at the pool bathhouse.
We have a motion for $75,000 for the FY16 capital budget to rebuild the bathhouse at the Living Memorial Park pool. Is there any further discussion about anything relating to pool capital improvements in the FY16 budget? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
So that's defeated 1-4. So then the next question has to do with the amount that we want to authorize for expenditure from the surplus fund to defray capital and operating expenses in the FY16 budget. For right now, we're just talking provisionally about a figure, and the final motion will be included as part of the warning, because we have to come up with the specific language. Maybe we should have some discussion about how much you want to authorize from the surplus or propose authorizing from the surplus. And we just go up and down the table. You want to go first?
I was just going to say, if we assigned $500,000, it would leave us with more than, based on the numbers that we have now, the best numbers we have, it would leave us with more than 9%. A little more than 9%.
That means you're in favor of 500,000?
Yeah, so I'd say $500,000. Nice round number.
Next.
Say 500, it sounds better than $500,000.
Okay. Is that where you're at too, John?
I am.
Donna?
I mean, it's such a preliminary, we're just, but it gives us a starting point.
Donna or Kate, if you want.
Well, we just, that all, if I'm correct, that's 172 that we just had. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with 500, because obviously we don't know what this other stuff is going to cost. So if we're saying up to, I don't have a problem with that.
I agree, up to 500.
Yeah, I'm opposed to doing that beyond the 320 that I proposed before, which is both 10% or thereabouts, and covers the essentially earnest money on the police fire and these additional capital items because of the other expenses. Dick?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dave, just taking $500,000, and then, I mean, if you look at the numbers, you're talking at you're 322 with the 150 and then the 172. So then you got $178,000 at your discretion. Again, if you're going to do that, I'd rather see you commit to a capital expenditure rather than just $172,000 to reduce taxes.
Yep. Well, for right now, it looks like there is a motion to seek authority. So at this point, I think at this point, there's no need for a motion on that item.
Right.
I think that the sense of the board is that you want to have up to $500,000 available to spend from the surplus for capital and operational items, and we're not going to be voting to approve the budget and the warning until, what's the date of the meeting, Jim?
29th.
Meeting
January
on the 29th, because that's also the second meeting for the public hearing on the charter revisions, and we've scheduled that to occur at the same time that we're finalizing the warning and the budget. So we will have language included and ready to go for the 29th, and we'll probably wind up talking about this again in public session, both on the 6th and on the 20th at our select board meetings. Is there any further discussion we need to have right now about those capital expenses or the surplus? All right. So the next item that was on for discussion was potential cuts. I included that as an item in the 2016 budget discussion because it seems a prudent thing to do. When the budget was rejected the last time, we went through a whole list of potential cuts that have been itemized over the recent years. Anybody want to plumb that well at this point? Snake that line.
I'm not touching it.
All right. Patrick, you seem to raise your hand.
Something occurred to me, actually, it wasn't specifically related to the program cuts. Actually was recalling some months ago, I seem to recall there was a motion by John Allen that was passed to add, I think it was $20,000 for skate park study, and that was added to the, we voted to add that to the warning. I don't believe it's in the budget anywhere. And I guess we'll do that. I guess we can do that separately in the way that we do human services funding. So
I think that's the way to deal with it for now.
Yeah.
It's not part of the budget at this point.
Yeah.
But we have to remember to include it in the warning. Having decided not to deal with further discussion about potential cuts, is there anybody else in the room who wants to talk about potential cuts? The next item has to do with the 1% local option sales tax. It played a prominent role in the materials that were distributed to us, but there hasn't been any decision by the board to put it on the agenda, and it's been soundly defeated, at least by town meeting in the past. Kate and I have it on the agenda-setting meeting agenda for today to decide if it's going to be on the January 6th meeting, because David Scholes asked for it to be considered based on Prudence McKinney's request. Everybody understands what I just said?
Yes.
So I guess the question right now is whether there's anything else that anybody wants to say about the local option sales tax question.
I don't think there's much left to say about it. I think it's been pretty thoroughly gone over. I would like to see another conversation at town meeting about it. Because again, when we went to see the governor, the first thing he did was thank us for not passing it. And then the next thing he did was explain that the way that the state had altered the fund, had tried to solve the problems of municipalities that provide services for broader communities was to give us the option of having a local tax. But apparently it's an option this community doesn't want. I would just like to hear that one more time, so that when we go out to other municipalities asking them to join us for some better fix than that we'll say it's really obvious that we can't pass it, or it'll get passed and we can pay for the police fire.
And I apologize for opening up that can of worms again, because I think I started it at our last meeting when I mentioned that I have been always opposed to the lost, but in lieu of trying to move the police fire project forward, and, you know, I could see looking into it. I didn't want it to get into this big, because it has been talked about a lot, you know, and it has been voted down twice. So I just want to make sure that it was just I just threw that out there as a
It's a
something to
potential,
look at,
it's a
but
potential source of revenue.
It is.
And people may be more willing to consider it.
Well, they may.
I think it's, if we're not looking at additional revenues, we're doing half the job.
Any further comments, queries, concerns with respect to the local option sales tax potential? All right, Dick.
I guess quickly, I would ask you, if you're going to put this on as an article question to the town, it did pass as a non-binding question on the ballot last year, and maybe you put it back on the ballot again just to reaffirm that it did pass, and that actually town meeting members actually rejected what the turnout of the vote wanted, and the vote was to pass the 1% sales tax. So, you know, we always talk about town meeting, and then we had a constituency vote for something, and town meeting turned its back. And you can talk about the turnout numbers, 10%, 20%. When you're keeping score, when you win or you lose, if it's by one, it's a win or a loss. So I guess if you're going to go through with this, I wouldn't mind seeing it back on the ballot as a non-binding article question to say, okay, it got support 2 years in a row, or it got voted down the second year. But either way, it's more information for fodder when you have the full discussion, if you're going to pursue it.
Well, Annette, maybe you can help me. I remember the town meeting voting against the 1% at the same meeting that we did the bond vote. Has there been another occasion recently where 1% was put to town meeting?
Well, it went to the public.
Right, but that was non-binding. Right. So I'm only aware of one time in recent memory that town meeting voted on the 1% local option sales tax. That was at the meeting on the bond vote. If there was a second time, Dick, when was it?
Last year.
It's actually been voted on two
Yes.
other times at town meeting. And the first time, I think I was outvoted body to one. I was the only one that supported it. And it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. The next time, a couple of years later, it was a much more serious discussion, although it was still defeated. And it was the year before, I believe, you got on the board, David.
So what you recall is that there's 3 times that town meeting has voted on the local option sales tax.
Two representative town meeting and then one public.
The last time that it was voted on was the same meeting as the bond vote on the police fire, and once before. Dick seems to recall twice before.
I recall twice before. I recall twice before that it was really, I mean, I was the chair of the board, I believe, at the time, and Mr. Coram, and I actually think John was there, and Miss O'Connor, and Dora Bublis, and it got defeated. I was the only one who supported it. 2 years later, we brought it forward again, and it was defeated at town meeting, and then it sat idle until we had which you were a part of at that special meeting up at the Academy School.
All right, well, we're going to talk about putting it on this agenda item for January 6th. But this has been an informative discussion. Thank you very much. Anything further about the local option sales tax? Howard?
Can I just ask a question somewhat related to non-binding votes? I've had a few questions about the police fire, and are the voters going to vote on that before, or is it going to happen after town rep? Is it going to be a non-binding on the town meeting election? When are the voters going to get a chance to discuss or vote on the proposed police fire?
Well, at this point, the board has made a decision to include additional money to pay interest for $4.7 million worth of additional borrowing for the police fire facility to include that in the FY16 budget. Full public process has yet to unfold, has yet to be developed and to unfold about what's going to happen with the police fire facilities going forward, and exactly what's going to happen hasn't been determined. So the only specific action that's been taken at this point is to include money towards that project in the FY16 budget. It's altogether likely and possible that there'll be a full public process, possible and likely, but it hasn't been designed yet and planned. Any other questions about anything? So, is there any summary items at this point relating to the FY16 budget? What we're going to anticipate is that for the January 6th meeting, there will be a revised budget that includes these items that we voted to endorse, so that we can see what the budget will look like with these items, and we will consider and discuss that budget in open session on the 16th. We'll probably do that again on the 20th at our public meeting. We'll be working towards language for dedicating money from the surplus, and then we'll take the final budget vote on the 29th of, we may take it at the 20th, final budget vote, and then approve the warning on the 29th. Is there any further discussion about budget-related items? All right, I move to enter executive session to discuss
Thanks, folks.
all right, I've moved to enter executive session to discuss employment, appointment, or evaluation of public officer or employee. Thank you, everybody, for attending and for participating. With a finding that, specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place town, select board, and people involved at a substantial disadvantage. And the board's going to meet on its own, and then it's going to invite the interim town manager into the session. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0.